Hi, my name is Chen Tai Bao Kang. This is subject business purpose, and today I will talk about Apple's purpose strategy for the next 10 minutes. Now, for the table of contents, I will talk about Apple's purpose as a company. Then I will talk about their value chain maps, which is how the supply chain of Apple works to create their products. Then I will talk about the SDG impacts that Apple has made through creating their products. And then I will talk about the social and environmental trends that the tech industry has, because that's what Apple is, which is a tech industry. And then I will talk about the KPIs or key performance indicator that like numbers and data that to show if Apple is succeeding or failing in their goals. And then I will talk about the customer relationship with Apple. And then I will talk about Apple's main partner slash supplier, the people that are working with the company. And then I will talk about the work culture of Apple. Now, for the purposes, Apple's purpose is to create products to enrich people's life, either to make a person more productive or to make them more creative by creating products that have heavy emphasis on simplicity and effectiveness as well as creativity. Now, for the map of values, there are two main parts to it. First, there is the primary activities, which is how they create the products directly, which is first will be the inbound logistic, where Apple would outsource of the components from different companies. For example, Sony is creating Apple's cameras, while Samsung is in charge of creating Apple's display. And then what they do is that for the operation, Apple would manage and communicate with all of these companies that have the components, and then to ship them to mainly in China in the Chinese factory in order to manufacture the the end of the product, which is the iPhones, the iMac, the tablets, and then to the outbound logistic where Apple would ship all of these devices to the main inventory place, which then transport to the Apple Store from numerous different countries. And for the marketing and sales, Apple mainly works on not giving too much discount and always give off the premium brand and reputation in order to hook in the people who see Apple as this like highly expensive luxury item. And then for the service, Apple has Apple Care, which is basically insurance, so that when people have to fix their phone because of damage, they won't have to pay extra. And they also have other services like Apple Music and also Apple TV that give the consumers extra entertainment for a monthly subscription. And for the the extra activities which are still important to Apple but not like extremely crucial, there is the HR management that is responsible of hiring the latest talent, the most talented people in order to stay competitive and help Apple innovate their products. They also have like a strong firm infrastructure because Apple is a global company with a lot of corporate housing and supply chain throughout the whole world. There's also the technology development where Apple pours in billions of dollars every year in order to create the most innovative products, and also the procurement where Apple always being very strategic with their partnerships and know how to communicate with all of their supplies. Now for the SDG impacts, some of them that Apple has impact through is, for example, SDG number 8, which is decent work and economic growth, because Apple hires tens of thousands, and in some cases they even hire more than that, maybe not full time, but a lot of them are also part time, which has helped a lot of countries for employment and also economic growth for the developing countries like India. They also have do a big part in SDG number 13, which is climate change, because Apple back in 2020 they have already become carbon neutral through their corporate operations, and they plan to be completely carbon neutral for all of their work and production. And for the SDG number 12, ensure sustainable consumption and production patterns. Apple has promised to try to recycle items in order to create their products. They also start to sell refurbished items of theirs, which means that like items that are broken but then they fix and able to sell it back. And they're also trying their best in order to replace plastic with more sustainable materials like aluminum. Now, for the broad KPI to measure success, there are many ways to indicate if Apple is succeeding or not with their business goals. For example, the financial performance, you can see the Apple's annual 10K filling, which is basically their financial. And for now, they have from 2023 to 2024, they have decent growth around 2% in terms of like net revenue, but their profit did decrease a bit for from 2023 to 2024. They also did, and also in terms of socially, they also have been better at making their work environment extremely better, and also continue increasing people's wages throughout the developing world. And they also contribute a big part in the environment by continue decreasing their carbon footprint and also trying to be more sustainable when creating their products and design the products. Now, for the customer relationship, Apple managed their customer relationship by giving a highly convenient ecosystem, which is also one of the biggest selling point, is that if you have a laptop, an iPhone, a phone, a tablet that's made from Apple, the software is very smoothly interconnected, which is highly convenient. Apple also has an extremely strong brand identity where it basically feels like the consumer is Apple, that the consumer is very creative, very professional, very high value when they own Apple products. And also, Apple offers a lot of loyalty programs and rewards. They have promised a lot of users to keep updating their software even after a decade, and they have promised that. And because of that, the customer expectation of Apple is to be extremely customer centric, to always think for the consumer, to value privacy, and to give customers the best experience as they can. The customers also believe that Apple products should be always simple and reliable, and they don't care too much about the more detailed technological side of phones and stuff. And they also believe that Apple should be sustainable and transparency in terms of what they do. Now, for the partners, Apple has a ton of partners according to their sources, but I will split it into the three main things. They have the component partners in order to create their products, which is also the primary activity from the value chain map that we just talked about. For example, TSMC is creating Apple's processor, the chips. Sony create Apple's cameras. Samsung create display and also other smaller technological stuff that the iPhone needs. And they also work with a lot of software partners. For example, Apple works with music labels like Spotify, Warner Bros., and also telecom carriers like AT&T and Tesla in order to give the customers entertainment and also like other important internet connections. Apple also collab with a lot of manufacturer partners like Foxconn and Pegatron in order to manufacture their products, which is also like the two main companies that create the products, mainly in China, by a Taiwanese company. Now, for the company's culture, Apple's organizational culture has always been about and more emphasis about creativity and less rigid and traditional hierarchical type of structure in the workplace. And they care about more about just people working together and collabing even from more different departments. For example, the people who work on the hardware sometimes will talk to the people who work on the software, and even different departments talk together in order to find new ideas. And I also suggest that like Apple should continue develop the organizational culture by continue being more diverse and also know how to communicate and connect with a bunch of diverse groups. And yeah, and here's the reference list that I have used so far, and there's also the source of the reference list under the YouTube description. Thank you for watching.